welcome to BCS Chester and North Wales and the latest in our line of COVID-friendly webinars. We're lucky this month, we've got Angela McLaughlin joining us. She's runs Angel Analysis. She's been in business analysis for a couple of years and has been a committee member of ours for a couple of years, so we're very fortunate to have her experience there on the committee. This webinar is entitled, Do You Need to Be a Techie? So we'll find out in a few minutes, I guess. So over to yourself, Angela, and have a good one.
Thanks, David. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. I had hoped to be able to deliver this session for you on a face-to-face basis, hopefully pulling in some interaction and being able to draw upon other people's opinions and experiences. As such, I would like to be able to take questions throughout. So if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions, or anything, there are a chat and questions section on the control panel, so feel free to use it. And I am very mindful that tonight's topic of business analysis, do you need to be a techie, can be somewhat subjective, and therefore obviously the views of tonight's slides are very much those of my own, based upon my own experiences. But I am very happy if people, as I say, through the questions in chat, want to put their thoughts and opinions across, because I'm more than happy to take optional views and such like as we go forward. So when I get the technology working, that would be a good start. So tonight I am going to share with you some analogies, some examples, try to bring things to life, and also try and make you laugh a little bit, or possibly even cringe as we go through this. So what am I going to cover? I'm going to be covering, first of all, who is Angela McLaughlin, i.e. who am I? What is business analysis? Kind of helps to understand the topic. Something around the history of business analysis. So where did it all start? The business analysis toolkit, but also the skill set that goes with a business analysis. Types of projects and relationships that can impact and require a business analyst. The what, the why, and the how. We'll then look at some conclusions, and there will be time for questions. Now, as I say, I am happy to take questions as we go along, so obviously please do feel free to use the chat and questions section as we go. So who am I? Well, I'm Angela McLaughlin. I have been a business analyst since 2014. And since during that time, I've worked across a number of different sectors, ranging from finance with Lloyds Banking Group to a small conveyancing company, so one extreme to the other also in terms of organisational size. I've also worked with the government for the Office of National Statistics, and I'm currently working with a housing association called Johnny Johnson Housing. Through my time as a business analyst, I have worked a number of different projects, ranging from regulatory projects, continuous improvement projects, through to full digital transformations, the most recent of which is part of Johnny Johnson, where we have just delivered a new corporate website, residence portal, associated app, and choice-based lettings platform, all on the same day. Quite fun, quite stressful. Throughout those roles, I have worked in both contractor and permanent roles, and have experience, obviously, of the varying sides of the different approaches that you can face, and also the different interactions you can have with stakeholders as a result of that. As I've mentioned, currently working with Johnny Johnson Housing, and you will see snippets of different bits and pieces going through. Now, obviously, being a BCS talk, it probably is worth mentioning that as well as being obviously a BCS committee member that David has mentioned, I do also hold the BCS International Diploma in Business Analysis, and I'm halfway through my advanced diploma, so quite ingrained with the BCS and ensuring that the recognition is there. Now, throughout my slides, to try and throw a little bit of personality across them, there are some hints and tips around me as part of that. And as I go through, I will try and point them out, because even though this is around business, I'm not all business. Outside of work, I am married to a wonderful husband. Recently celebrated my 2nd wedding anniversary. And to keep myself busy, not that I'm busy enough, I am a triathlete, amateur, I will confess, and I'm also a scuba diver. So I do like to mix things up and work around things where I can. So, oh, one other thing I forgot to mention is, obviously with the BCS, David mentioned I am a committee member, is when you see all those posts on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, I am the face behind our social media, so I am our committee's webmaster. So if you see the posts out there and you want to interact with me, please feel free to do so. If you've got ideas for future topics, again, please feel free to do so. So back to the subject, business analysis. So what is business analysis? I will apologise for this slide, it is going to be quite wordy. However, definitions tend to be in the nature quite wordy, so here goes. So business analysis, a disciplined approach for introducing and managing change to organisations, whether that be not-for-profit, for-profit or for government. As I say, the experience I have is pretty much probably covered all of those different areas. It is the practice of enabling change in an organisational context. So obviously when you think of an organisation, there are many different areas to that. And we always define what is needed by recommending solutions. We never solutionize, i.e. we never tell a business what they should have. It's always that make recommendations. At the end of the day, it is for the business to decide what they feel is best for them based upon those recommendations. As a result, we will identify and articulate the needs for change in the organisation. We will identify potential solutions that will maximise value delivered to the organisation and its stakeholders, and we can work across all levels of an organisation, and I will come on to that, as you'll see in later slides. With the specialised knowledge, we are able to help guide businesses through unknown or unmapped territories. So you may have a business that they know where they are, they know where they want to get to, but they don't know how to get there, and that's where we can add real benefit and real support to a business in helping them, whether it be grow, change direction, or just simply jump from point A to B. The definition I've provided tonight is sourced by the IIBA, and as it says there, business analysis helps businesses do business better. But where did business analysis come from? So let's look at the history of business analysis. It has been around for some time, pretty much going back to Word dot. Okay, maybe not quite to the Big Bang, that may be a bit premature, but it does go back to effectively when business did first evolve. So if you think about the definition that we've just gone through, it does talk around the fact that it's business improvement, expand, businesses making changes, enhancing organisational structure. Now, obviously back in those days, when business analysis first formed, it was arguably before the age of technology, and therefore was very much on that business focused side of things. However, when we get to the 1940s and a good old Lancaster Bomber, little fact, Lancaster Bombers were flown by my grandfather. I'm very committed to the RAF. So back to the 1940s and the era of the Lancaster Bomber was also the birth of the first programmable computer. Now, I'm sure you can appreciate the first programmable computer and the implications that would then have, not just on the world in general, but on businesses and how businesses operated. And as a result, the role of the business analyst did have to adapt to take into consideration the new technology. As we progress through the years, 1977, a key year of when the internet first network was connected, again changing things on how we connect, how we adapt, and how technology has taken part in evolution of society, business, and the role of business analysis. However, it wasn't until the 1980s, yep, I'm a kiddo from the 80s, it was more common that not just the use of technology, but the enhancement of the internet, cost of technology being more affordable, that again further enabled businesses to enhance and utilise technology within their organisations. As a result, again, business analysis has had to adapt, because every time you make a change in a business, there are implications that that will have, and there are considerations on what that means for the business and how the business needs to evolve. Because of the history of the business analysis role, there are varying titles that tend to have gone with a business analyst. So you may have heard of a systems analyst, requirements engineer, product owner, data analyst, management consultant, enterprise architect, business architect, management consultant. You name it, there are a number of titles out there that can go with the role or skill set, as we'll come on to. However, with business analysis, although these roles do stand in their own right, the role of a business analyst has, in the modern era, effectively become, in some aspects, a hybrid of these roles. And I'm sure you can appreciate, as a result of that, the varying need for technology, the varying need for being technical. Not only that, but the skill set around these roles, and therefore the role of the business analyst, you can also see when it comes to projects, change within organisations, does mirror into other jobs such as project management, product management, software development, and quality assurance. So there is a common denominator of you may be a business analyst, but your skill set is transposable. So more about the skill set. We tend to find we need a personality because we have stakeholders that we need to speak to, and those stakeholders can vary in terms of, you know, how we talk to them, how we want to get our message across, the personality that goes with them. We need to be dedicated in our role, because at the end of the day, if we're not dedicated, are we actually going to get that change coming across? Multitasking. Now, multitasking, well, we spin a lot of plates. I'm sure you've heard that phrase coined many times. And especially if we're working across multiple projects, you will have to multitask to be able to manage the expectations and the tasks that you need to undertake to deliver the business analyst role. We need to be empathetic, because the business might ask for something that we simply can't deliver for justifiable reasons. But we need to be there, we need to be understanding, we need to put ourselves in their shoes to be able to fully engage with them, to be able to deliver what they want, or explain to them why we can't deliver what they want. We need to make sure we have got attention to detail. Sometimes it's the small things, it's the small elements of the picture that can actually be quite key to delivering whatever it is you might want to deliver. And we need to be able to adapt and overcome. I've spoke about, you know, sometimes we might not be able to deliver on an ask of the business. We may be restricted by technology. The ask might not be there. You know, the business might ask you, well, I want to save time on commuting, therefore I want all of our staff to be able to teleport to the office on a Monday morning and teleport home when they finish work at the end of the day, so that they're nice and fresh and they don't have to sit on the motorway and travel and things like that. Well, unfortunately, technology doesn't allow for that at the moment, and we need to be able to manage the expectations of our stakeholders when it comes to things like that. We also need to be able to make sure we've got a common language, a common understanding, because multiple stakeholders in our current society, we have multilingual, we have different roles. So are you a developer that's quite technical, quite in the detail, versus potentially a business analyst? But is that business analyst techie? Do they really understand when you start talking APIs and such like? Do they know what you mean? So if you think about it, you're off on holiday. Now, I appreciate with COVID, that might not be so simple, but transport yourselves, guys. We're going to go out to Japan. Fantastic country. And we want to go for a beer. But how many of you can speak Japanese? How many of the Japanese can speak English? Possibly some broken English. But I'm sure you can appreciate that when you're in Japan or any other country, do you need to be able to speak their language to get your message across? More often than not, you probably don't, because you will find a common language, you will find a common way to be able to make that communication. And of course, as a business analyst, we always want to have that willingness to learn and develop, because learning new skills, you never know what new skills can actually help you on your journey. It might be that skill that you picked up last week that you go, ooh, that's the light bulb moment to help me in tomorrow's problem. Always a great way to develop. So we talked a bit about the skills of a business analyst, but let's have a look at the tools that a business analyst can use. Now, a business analyst can get involved in many different areas of a project. It could be right at the beginning of the project where they want to look at actually what's the cause of the issues within an organisation, whether that be as an organisation or whether that be in a specific department or in a specific process. We can use things like our fishbone diagrams to help the business understand what is that root cause. We can do mind mapping to help draw out what it is that the business is after. And then we can transpose the details that we've got from that into other potentially visual diagrams. So the use of use case diagrams. How do our people interact with our systems? Doesn't need to be technical, just needs to be enough to demonstrate so that the people and the developers can understand how the two connect. We've got our process diagrams. Within there, we can demonstrate how both people and systems interact, and a great visual way rather than stakeholders getting lost in words. We've then got workshops, great way of eliciting requirements. Now, I have swapped my old tyre fitting workshop for the more social environment of working with colleagues, much cleaner, much more friendly, easier to have a brew, I will confess. But as well as our workshops, we also have interviews, where interviews can be on a one-to-one basis or a one-to-many basis, depending upon the need of the workshop and what it is that you're trying to elicit from that. If workshops and interviews aren't always the way you want to go, you can always use questionnaires and surveys, great ways to go out to large audiences and be able to understand what it is that you would be looking for. One question has just popped up. I have seen that there. I'm just going to finish this slide and then I'm going to come back to you on that, because I think some of the next bits on this slide might help answer that one for you. So looking at some more of our slides. So we've got our questionnaires, we've got our surveys, we can get out to those larger audiences. Also, grab a coffee, have a conversation. What knowledge is it you can bring? Now, there might be some areas where you think, you know, I don't have any knowledge, I don't know what it is I'm doing, but actually you'll be surprised at how much knowledge you can bring, whether that's your background knowledge, whether it's an SME knowledge you bring from a previous experience or a previous role. It could be engaging with other members of the project or Scrum team, but just grab that coffee, have that conversation, get things there out on the table. Pop it, fantastic tool. Think holistically. Think about how the change that you're trying to support that business with impacts. I'm going to say the entire organisation, but I don't necessarily mean the entire organisation. I mean, how does it impact on the people that are in the organisation, the processes they undertake? How does that work between one department and another department? And how does both the information, data, and the technology that we use cross-transpose across that. So have we got the people with the right technological abilities for the introduction of a new system? Do the processes support that new system? Is the organisation ready for that system? So what advice would I give to somebody who's thinking of becoming a business analyst? What would be my key advice? Think outside the box. Think of that holistic picture and think of the knock-on effects of what it is that you're trying to deliver. But most of all, be understanding and helpful, be supportive. More than happy to pick up further if you want any further information on that. And then I'm not going to say finally within a BA toolkit, because a BA toolkit never closes. It's always growing. We're always adding new skills, new tools to it. But in this case, we've got prototypes. As it happens, this is an example of a prototype aeroplane. Love aeroplanes. Got a degree in aerospace engineering. So I just find it absolutely fascinating. But prototypes can be a real good way of bringing things to life, because especially if the business doesn't necessarily fully understand or can't necessarily picture, remember that whole getting lost in words, but how do they help understand what it is that they're working through? Can they picture how to get from A to B? If you can give them something visual or a prototype that they can touch and feel, that can really help them coming in on their journey. So how do you know which tools to use? Fantastic question. It'll depend upon the situation that you're in. So dependent upon what it is you're trying to achieve. And like with most things, there can be a textbook way of using these tools, but the textbook way might not necessarily work for what you're trying to achieve. You might need a simplified version of it. So if you look at the use case diagram, this section in the middle where it's a box with lots of little bubbles in it, just to the left of my tyre fitting workshop, the outside of that is a system. You've got a little stick man on the outside that shows an interaction and lots of lines on it that show the interaction. But actually you might want to simplify that down and go, I've got a new system. It might be a new website, and you simply want to go, well, who's going to interact with that website? What sort of customers am I going to be getting using that website? Just to start drawing out what it is or who it is that's that interaction, and being able to do it in a way that explains it to a stakeholder. It is one of these trial and errors. It might be that you have specific tools that you prefer to, that are your go-to tools. But if those tools aren't working, not necessarily for you, but for your stakeholders, you might need to adapt. You might need to adjust for what it is that you're trying to achieve. So never think one tool is a fit-all. It can very much be, I'll use a bit of multiple things to be able to get the message across, and what works in one scenario may not work for another, because your stakeholders are different from one project to another. Oh, the next question I am going to come back to, because that one's a little bit more tricky, and I think I'm going to come into that one as part of the conclusion. So I haven't forgotten about you, but we will come back to it. So next, we've spoken a little bit about projects as we've gone through, and we've spoken a little bit about relationships, but let's look at that in a little more detail. So projects can have multiple different types. They could be regulatory. So a prime example of a regulatory project would be something like when GDPR implemented. GDPR, you know, it overhauled so many things and had so many implications for so many businesses. How many businesses do you know of that didn't go, oh my God, I need to do something about this? It is a regulatory project always going to be technology enabled. In this day and age, there's probably going to be an element of technology with that, but actually quite a lot of it's probably going to sit around your processes, your people. What training do they need to be able to help them through that journey? Then we've got the digital transformations. Hear that phrase coined about all the time at the moment. Digital transformation, digital transformation. They can take multiple formats. COVID has been a fantastic experience for some in terms of that digital transformation journey, because where previously you probably had a contact centre, sat in an office building, sat alongside each other, taking those calls. How many of those contact centres suddenly got, when COVID hit, oh my God, you need to work from home. How do we enable you to be able to work from home? What impact does that have on the telephony solution? Do we need to adapt it? Do we need to change it? Do you have the setup to work from home, the internet connection to work from home, whatever it might be? Digital transformation, it can be small, it can be big, it can be completely overhauling. Is it a complete new system? Is it a system that impacts just one team? Or is it a system that's going to span the end-to-end breadth of an organisation? We can have data-driven projects. Now, you are getting into the realms of probably needing a bit of techie skills with this one, because data-driven, probably thinking, data-driven gives the example of, oh my God, these are probably going to be experts in the likes of Microsoft Excel, manipulating the numbers, manipulating the data. But quite often you will also hear the phrase of data-driven decisions to help drive those changes that we want to make in organisations. And with the implementation of GDPR, data-driven decisions have become even more decisive, because we have to ensure that regulatory-wise, we're holding the right data for the right reasons in the right format. Now, I'm sure you can appreciate across the few examples I've spoken about there, that projects can be simple, and it might be a simple project where you're the sole business analyst on that project. It could also be a more complex project, an end-to-end digital transformation, for example. You're probably not going to be alone on that one. You're probably going to have quite a team around you, a team of business analysts overlaid with developers and testers and project managers and subject matter experts from the business and a multitude of others. So how do we manage those relationships? Well, those relationships depends upon where they come from. They could be internal to the business, so they don't necessarily understand all of our project speak. So if we're working in an agile environment and we're talking daily stand-ups and retrospectives and scrum teams and scrum masters, do they understand the terminology? Or do we need to ditch our terminology to have that engagement, to find that common language with our business stakeholders? Obviously, you'll have in-project conversations. So a business analyst talking to a project manager, talking to a tester, talking to a developer, making sure we find that common language, making sure that we know where we're going with this. You could have third parties involved. You might not have an in-house development team. You might be outsourcing it to a third party. You might be buying software off the shelf from a supplier and you need to engage with them. And then not just where do your stakeholders come from and what relationships do you need to have with them, but what level of stakeholder? Are they your peers? Are they senior to you? Are you starting to speak at director level? And I'm sure you can now appreciate that from the types of projects, this type of relationships, all of those skills that you've built up, all of those tools that you've got in your tool bag will start to become critical, and you will pull on the various different bits as you go through to draw upon what you need to get the engagement you need to help the business deliver what they're trying to achieve. So what's their knowledge? What are you doing for them? What can they do for you? And ultimately, how does that impact the end client or the end user? So one example, I've talked about common knowledge. I've talked around, do you need to be a techie? I'm a professed, I'm not techie. Yep, you heard me say it, I'm a business analyst and I do not consider myself to be a techie. So I came up with the walking email because on one of the projects I was working on, when I was working for a conveyancing company, one of the pieces of work I needed to do to support the project team in their delivery was I needed to help the developers. Yeah, that was absolutely a terrifying phrase, and you're going to help the developers. She screams, I'm not techie. So I got a very, very quick walkthrough of SQL coding. I got a very quick walkthrough of APIs and doorways and golden handshakes, secure tokens, and all of these other acronyms and terminologies, most of which I can't completely remember, but I managed to find a way to put that techie speak into a non-techie way that my brain could understand. And it's not an exact science, I will confess, it's not an exact science, but it's enough for me to be able to then go back and have an understanding. So working for a conveyancing company, I'm looking at some SQL coding, and this coding is going off to land registry and pulling details of what's held at land registry, you know, who's the owner of a property and things like that. And I viewed that as being, effectively, if you think about it, of being the body of the information you're trying to receive from this message that's going through the ether. So I put that as being an attachment to my email, because I understand attachments to emails. They're like a paperclip. They go on the side. Now, the bit above and the bit below that body or that attachment is the wrapper. It effectively becomes my email. So my email is wrapping to keep safe my attachment. The attachment's the important bit that I need to get the message of. And then they start talking about all these different channels that different people, you know, that this message can take, because it goes down one channel and it's got to make sure it's secure and it's protected. So I've got this email, which is wrapping up my protective attachment, and it's going out my house. It's going out the front door. It's taking the API. So it's using the front door, and the front door is, we need to make sure it's unlocked. So we've got that security token. We've got that way of being able to know that I am the right message going out of the right channel, going down the road. My walking email, it's walking down the road. It knows where it wants to go, and when it gets to the other end, it knocks on the door. And when it knocks on the door will have a security guard on it, and that security guard will do that security check to go, do I know who you are? Have you got your ID? Yep, there's my security token. Perfect, we can let you in. But when I get in at the other end, because I've shown my security token and they know who I am, my email can be unwrapped to reveal my attachment, which is that crucial information. So as you can see, that's one example of purely and simply kind of my dumbed down way of trying to think about how all this techie speak works together in a way that I can understand to pull out the information I needed from all of this coding to get the detailed bits that I needed to do the analysis for the developers to help understand what the project needed going forward. So moving on, the what, the why, and the how. So I've given some examples of what is business analysis. We talked about the history of business analysis, how technology got involved in business analysis, and some examples of where you might need to be a bit more technical, but some examples of where maybe you don't need to be so technical. But the key principle of a business analyst is to think about the what, the why, and the how. So the what's the client after? And again, I'm going to play this in a non-technical format, but there are multiple technical and non-technical ways this can be seen. So the what, this example, the client's looking to book a meal. That's what they want to do. They want to book a meal. The business analysis comes in. What do I need to do? Well, I need to gather the requirements. Now, those requirements in this instance is, well, what's the meal for? It's for a birthday. Whose birthday is it? It's my son's. What's his favourite ingredients? Or what is it he likes to eat? You get that list of ingredients. You understand the what. You understand the why. It's a meal for my son's birthday, and these are the foods that he loves. As a business analyst, you will then capture that using the tools we've spoken about, and there's many more besides. And from that, we can then document that to pass that over to our developer. Now, when we pass this over to our developer, we want to do it in a way that captures the client's ask, understands the why, understands the what, but doesn't, I repeat, does not hamper the creativity of the how. There are a multitude of ways a how can be delivered, and we do not want to hamper that creativity, because if you hamper that creativity, you're potentially going to lose some of the best solutions you could have. So going back to our example, we've got a client booking a meal for a son's birthday. We've got a list of ingredients. How many chefs would love it if you just gave them that as a scenario? And how many different varieties of meals could they come up with, because we haven't told them the how. We've left the how to be their creativity. We've let them work their magic and come up with options for us. And I'm sure you can appreciate with the what, the why, and the how, there are many different ways, technical and non-technical, that we can work through. I'm just going to pause there and take a quick drink and cross-check the questions that are coming in, because I am mindful I've not gone back to them as I promised I would. I will apologise, the technology for the question system is not the most intuitive, so please do bear with me a moment. Oh, we've had somebody losing audio. Apologies for that. I hope you're not the only one, and I hope you've managed to get this back. Now, this is being recorded, so if you have lost the audio, you will be able to play it back. I will put the links out on social media, as it will go on YouTube. I will come back to that question. Could data-driven be user research? It certainly can be user research. And it doesn't just have to be user research in the terms of like your questionnaires, your surveys and things like that. Data-driven research could literally be data mining the systems you already have in place to be able to pull out key bits of data to understand what it is you're after, or who are my clients, or Google Analytics, what traffic am I getting to my website? Multitude of different ways that can be delivered. So, moving on to our conclusion, and you will be pleased to know with the conclusion I am starting to wrap this up. So we started by asking, do you have to be a techie? Well, I'm sure you can now appreciate there are many factors to consider in trying to answer this question. We need to consider the fact that we've got multiple stakeholders, and across those stakeholders, we do need to understand that we've got varying relationships with them. Now, from those relationships, we may need to find that common language. Not all of our stakeholders will be technical, but some may be. How do we work that situation through? Am I a business speaking analyst, or am I a technical speaking analyst? Am I an analyst working solo on a project, and therefore I'm having to wear multiple hats and engage with multiple stakeholders? Or am I part of a team, and therefore I can use my strengths to the best for the project? That brings us on to the types of projects, the size, the scope, the complexity. So, personally, in my opinion, do you have to be a techie? No, you don't. But based upon all of the things that we've covered in tonight's session, I'm going to sit on the fence and go, maybe. I'll leave that up to you for your conclusions, and I would love to be able to hear your thoughts and opinions on that. I will now just flick back through and take any further questions. Thank you very much for listening. I hope my talk has been of interest and had some useful facts into it. As I say, I'd love to hear what you think about it. Get involved, chat with me on social media. And do you think you need to be a techie to be a business analyst? So, right, flicking back. David, I don't know whether you've been tracking any of these questions coming in.
Yeah, you've done quite a good job, really, Andrew, going through them as you've gone. There's another one come in now, though. It says, are the BA roles, are they overlapped by product owners in an agile world?
It depends upon how the organisation has set that agile world up. And apologies, but that phrase maybe comes into play multiple times. So depending upon the business analyst and their experience, they may be asked to step up to take on that product owner role. However, there may also be a business analyst that has been maybe contracted in, maybe doesn't have the expertise of the organisation or the sector that they've been brought into, and therefore the business may appoint a subject matter expert from within the organisation, maybe a member of the management team, to act in that product owner role within the project. So I appreciate it is, again, another maybe kind of answer, but projects are so vast and so varying. But yes, there is the possibility that you will be asked to take on that role. One of the other questions I've just noticed there is the one that I said I would come back to, of how do you keep yourself up to date with different technologies and providers, assuming that a BA should be a vendor and therefore technology agnostic? Fantastic question, absolutely fantastic. So keeping myself up to date with technologies, I'm sure you can completely appreciate the world of technology moves at such a fast pace. It's impossible to keep up to date with absolutely everything that's going on in the world. But what you can do is, especially using the likes of the BCS and the newsletters and things like that, you can keep a breadth of what's going on. And then by understanding the areas that you're going into, so wanting to be a vendor in an organisation, understand what it is that that organisation is looking for from you and do your research. You draw on what it is that you can find out, use any contacts that you may have. If there's something that's specific technology that maybe you're not so familiar with, or maybe you've come across it in passing but you don't have necessarily the detail behind what you need, but you know what options of software that you might be looking at, go out and research. Reach out to the providers of those software, ask the questions. And as I mentioned when we were talking about the skills of a BA, don't be afraid to ask those awkward questions, because you never know, the awkward question might just be the one that gives you that light bulb moment. Hope that's been helpful in answering that question. David, is there any more questions that you can see popping up?
Yeah, there's a couple come up, and so we have Jessica's a new BA, and quite interested in what you're saying, really. So she wants to understand the basic IT concepts and wondering where to start with APIs, SQL, all that sort of thing. Is there some basic IT textbook or something, or how would you recommend she gets to grips with the basics of the IT world?
So there's that phrase again, depends. So yeah, Jessica, fantastic question. And the reason I'm saying it depends is, what sort of business analyst do you want to be? If you want to go down the technical route, there are so many different varieties of coding that can be used. So you've heard of things like C++ and SQL, and there's many, many more besides. So you can get a general understanding of some of the basics. So if you even just a simple Google search of what's an API, it'll bring up a multitude of information. There's also things like your dummies guides. There's also obviously the BCS. It's a fantastic source of being able to get information, and especially if you remember, you can get access to the knowledge banks to be able to get that. But think about what you want in terms of being a business analyst, when you, especially if you're going down the IT route, as to which journey you want to take, because you might think SQL's the version that I want, but in the coding world, coding moves on so quickly. So you might go, oh, actually SQL, you know, I'm not saying it is, but it might not be quite the top coding language, and you might go, oh, actually I'm better off trying to pick up a basis in another language. So think about what it is that you're trying to achieve to help you fine tune where you want. And like I said, there are multiple sources out there. Feel free, my contact details are on the screen, so if you want more information or you want to chat, feel free to reach out to me. But really have a think about what it is you're trying to achieve before you go down the lines of trying to learn everything, because trying to learn everything, you'll have a grounding, but you'll possibly confuse yourself in the process, especially in the early days.
I suppose we have to give ourselves a plug here as well, because we have a webinar once a month. Not having one next month in August, we're having a month off, but there'll be another one coming up in September. So everyone's always welcome to join the monthly BCS webinars. And there's quite a big history of all the webinars that all of the BCS groups have done over the pandemic in YouTube. So have a look at the BCS channels on YouTube, and there's lots and lots of really great webinars there to help you learn.
Definitely. Just going to go back to the questions, if that's all right, David, because I've just noticed there's another one just popped up. So would you document requirements or user needs, or is there no difference? Generally, I'm going to say there's no drastic difference. So requirements or user needs, they're effectively the same thing. They are still the ask of the business. You just may document them in a slightly different format, dependent upon whether you go down documenting it as in a requirement format, if you are working in a waterfall or potentially non-technical version. Whereas if you were documenting it as a user story, it's still the same ask, it's just the way you're capturing it that can slightly vary. Hope that helps.
Okay, any more questions, anybody? No, nothing coming up. Well, all that leaves for me to do, I suppose, then is thank Ange very much for that great talk. It is quite a skill set that you need there. So interesting, it's linked to so many other roles, old-fashioned roles like system analysts that used to be very widespread a number of years ago, but not so much so now. And so many other areas of the business as well. And you know, translating from techie to human is a very, very difficult task. So you're doing really well there.
Brilliant, thank you. It has been a pleasure, and like I said, my contact details are on the screen, so if anybody does want to reach out, obviously please feel free to do so. And like I say, for my sins, I am the BCS Chester and North Wales webmaster, so if you want to interact on social media, please feel free to do so.
Thanks, Ange, and sorry for the occasional dropouts that we had on the thing, but I hope it didn't ruin things too much for people. So thank you, Ange. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We'll have another webinar on the second Wednesday of September, and we'll send an email out to everybody in the area BCS mailing list. And if you are not a member of the BCS, please join. But if you don't want to join, you are able to join our non-members mailing list. Please just send an email to Martin, our chair. Details are on the BCS website, the BCS Chester and North Wales website, on how to get in touch with him, and we'll add you onto that link. So thank you very much, and if there's nothing else, we'll say good night. Thanks, Ange.
Cheers, guys. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye, Ange.